Hello, Patreon supporters. Thanks for joining us for our spoiler talk for the book The Warehouse by Rob Hart. I think Livius, maybe without saying it, kind of cut me off from continuing to talk by his abrupt ending of the conversation in our normal review because I just wanted to keep diving in. So we're going to do that here.
For sure. Hey, I have a question for you.
Yep.
And it's a question I probably should ask Rob Hart. So I think that anybody who listened to the review at this point, definitely took that you had a very poor view of cloud and what cloud has become. So I guess I'm just curious on what would you propose that we keep from having a company become as large as cloud? Because one of the things that I said in the review, and I'm only repeating it here because I know nobody stopped at that point in the review to come listen to this, was that they created the situation. They just became so big that forces people to them from a work standpoint or even from a shopping standpoint. So one of the things we didn't go into, right, is that a lot of retail has closed. Some of it because of Black Friday massacres, which was a terrible thing that happened where lots of people died in some Black Friday massacres, which I felt, although it wasn't really implicitly stated in the book, that cloud kind of created that. Did you get that feeling too?
I absolutely did.
So what do you think? How do you keep a company like Amazon? Because let's face it, that's kind of the basis for this, although it's definitely not Amazon. How do you keep a company from becoming so big that they become the only choice?
Oh my God! Maybe I should have gone to college for economics.
No, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just, here's what we do. And when I say we, I mean everybody. We go, someone ought to do something about this fucking Amazon or whatever. But then nobody knows what that is. Like, at what point, how do you stop a business from becoming a successful business? It doesn't matter if it's Amazon. Let's take TV manufacturers. What if LG just figured out a way to make good TVs even cheaper, to the point where nobody buys a Sony or a Samsung or whatever, because LG is able to do your 75-inch 4K, beautiful TV for $300. Like, at what point, or how do you stop them and say, listen, you're selling too many TVs and you're hurting the other guys?
Well, I mean, I'm aware of some laws that are supposed to enforce those types of things. So, like, antitrust laws in general are supposed to, protect the consumer from, a company taking advantage of its control over whatever industry it's involved in. So, like, it's funny because AT&T is a great example where AT&T got so big at one point that it was forced to break up into, a bunch of smaller companies. Like, this is probably 25 years ago or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in the ensuing years, it has very slowly, those small companies that all broke up have all come back together so that it's basically the same AT&T that was forced to break up, like, three decades ago. So in a situation like this, the scary part for me is that it's not necessarily that it's like the biggest game for what it is, but it's the biggest game for everything. Like, it covers the actual products, the distribution of the products, like, it controls the companies that make the products. Like, it's all encompassing, and you're seeing that, I think, more now than we have in the past, where, like, you look at tech companies that I'm trying to think, they make hardware, but they also make software, but then they also have a service. They're not just a hardware company anymore. They do it all. And if they get so good in all of those different things, then suddenly they're the only game, not only for the physical product you buy, but for how you use it and what you use it with. And you know what I'm saying? So that's that's the scary thing for me, is like that distributed control of everything, all parts of the ecosystem or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't want you to think I'm debating with you that it's scary. I'm just trying to think that as a business, your job is to, continue to grow your business, right?
Yeah.
If we were business-like people, we would have figured out a way to grow this podcast, right? And I wouldn't want someone to come in and say, hey, listen, we looked and 60% of people that listen to podcasts only listen to your podcast. Like, we have to do something about that. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I feel whenever these conversations come up, that we all kind of rail at the man, for being too big. But like, at what point is it okay to tell someone, hey, you have to stop providing goods and or services or entertainment or whatever the facet is that we're talking about, because you're too good at it, and it's hurting the other shitty podcasts that are out there that can't get, good market share. But we would be on that side, getting hurt by good podcasts, like with big listenerships. But you get what I'm saying. Like, at what point do you stop, and how do you control that?
So I think that, I'll tell you where I see the point of stopping someone is, not that I find a solution in it, but like, in the book, one of the Gibson Wells blogs was about the pickle company, and the pickle company story was the exact example of why a company that's too large is a bad thing, because the whole idea of capitalism is to allow everybody the opportunity to succeed, right? To be successful in their own business or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you have the power that you had, like the power that this cod company has, that's not the case. This company basically said, hey, we can't survive as a company based on what you want us to do. So we're going to, we disagree with what you're asking from us. And so Cloud just decided, we're going to run you out of business by doing our own thing the way we want. And that's like that's an unfair use of power to dominate a market. And I would say that that's the type of thing that you would step in and say, hey, you can't do these types of things. As far as how, who fucking knows?
It's one of, like I said, it's one of those interesting things. And you're right. There might be economists out there, but I see these things on newscasts or talked about on current event podcasts, that kind of thing. And I always think, like, there doesn't seem to be a solution. There's just a lot of complaining about the problem. And I'm not saying it's not a problem. So I don't want you to think I'm taking like the other side of this and saying, well, we should just cloud sounds like a great idea, because it doesn't. Yeah. I just don't know how to. Sorry, I don't even know if that's spoiler talk. Like, it's just something that I thought would be interesting to get your take on. I clearly don't have an answer. I don't. Part of me doesn't even know that it's like a solvable problem.
Here's where, like, so let's look at. I'm going to say something that might be entirely wrong. So I'm just going to say things in very like vague terms. Let's say I make a product, or let's say I sell a product in a little store in a little town. And because of the volume that I sell, I get that product at a certain price. And then one of my competitors is Cloud, who, because of the way it's structured and like, how big it is in general, they sell that same thing at a significantly lower price, because that is what they are given based on the volume they sell. How can I compete with that? A, how can I compete? B, whose fault is it? Is it the company that's giving a different price? Like, there should be a fairness in, the goods that I'm selling. I shouldn't have not have the upper hand. I don't know. It's I see where the problem is, but I can't think about. And then the other problem is, like, you get, and Rob Hart was talking about this, those companies that are so massive, not only do they get a break on the products that they're selling, but they also get tax breaks and stuff like that. Amazon doesn't pay taxes in the United States. So like all that money, it's almost like that money makes itself more money and more power and more influence. So there's got to be something to regulate that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. By the way, that thing on Amazon not paying taxes, there seems to be some question. I saw an article about that the other day that said that wasn't necessarily a true statement. And interestingly enough, and again, not in defense of Amazon, who I use, and let's face it, I mean, that's where we take our synopses from. It's where we get books from a lot of the time. But there was a thing talking about Amazon and how much Amazon employees paid in payroll taxes for the year, which is something that we never really talk about like the money that gets funneled back into the system through payroll and then payroll taxes that gets funneled back up to government. It was a really interesting, I don't want to say because it wasn't like a pro Amazon take, but it seemed like a very like, let's really look at the numbers kind of thing. So it'd be an interesting, be an interesting thing to talk about and look into as well. So if Amazon didn't exist, and I know now we're talking about Amazon, right? If Amazon didn't exist, what would that mean for employment numbers? What would that mean for federal tax numbers and state income tax numbers and stuff? And those, let's face it, they're in every state now. I believe they have distribution centers in every state.
So I guess my first real like red flag with that, and we shouldn't let this devolve into like a debate, but like, so basically what I got out of what you just said was it's okay if the company doesn't pay tax because we're taxing the people that work for it.
Well, we all pay taxes. I mean, you pay taxes at the company you work at, and I pay taxes at the company. I know the company I work at took some pretty big tax breaks when they chose where to locate their corporate headquarters, as I'm assuming your company did at some point. So, you know what I mean? Like, you have to look at like what good it does, like how many people your company employs. And would those people have jobs or jobs like the jobs they have if it didn't exist? And then obviously the same for my company or the listener, whoever is listening right now's company.
On the other side of the coin is they might have better jobs if that company didn't exist.
It's possible.
Yeah. Anyway, this is not spoiler talk at all.
No, it's not. So, but we did touch on some things that are kind of important to the cloud situation, right? So cloud got so big because nobody could answer the questions that we just talked about.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Spoiler talk. Where do you want to start?
The big thing for me, one of the things that I want to talk about, you already touched on, was the Black Friday riots being orchestrated by cloud, which, again, I think Rob did a great job of leaving that up to us and making us think about it, but like instilling that kind of paranoia perspective of, yeah, they probably did this because who's the most likely to benefit from people being too afraid to go into brick and mortar stores. So I thought that was really, really well done.
For sure. I mean, Black Friday problems have existed for a number of years, but yeah, you're right. It was kind of masterfully done and left to a, like you and I are talking about it and somebody else who read the book may just think like, yeah, Black Friday shit happens. It just got really, really bad one year.
And to kind of counterbalance that, and I thought this was really great, was the Fahrenheit 451, which, like, there's the conspiracy theorists, like the people who are trying to bring the company down very poorly, think that because people can't get this book delivered, or it's showing that it's out of stock or whatever, it's an intentional thing because the company doesn't want you to read that stuff. And it's revealed that it's just that people don't care. And to me, that was like, that is one of the major symptoms of a lot of the problems that are happening right now. And we talked about it with our interview with Rob, is like, people just aren't fucking motivated to take action or to educate themselves about things, whether, it's in favor of the company or against it. They just don't care enough. And so that was a nice kernel of doubt to kind of put into everything, because it kept everything very unsure. It kept it right at that edge. And he did that. So, like, there's one thing about this book that I love is the fact that he made it that even though it's pretty obvious that, this company is way more looking out for itself than for the people that work for it or the economy, despite what it says, some things might just be that way because that's how they are.
Yes. So while we're on characters, both Zinnia and Paxton, I mentioned in the review part, kind of, they're not always the stellar examples of a protagonist that you support the whole time. So Zinnia, because we're in spoiler talk, you expect that she's going to take down the whole company and whatever, right? And that she's kind of this white hat infiltrator, like she's doing this corporate espionage, but she really wants to take down this big company. And ultimately, she's just a fucking mercenary. Like, that she fucking ODs that girl just to take her watch. Like, she almost kills Paxton, who she has this relationship with, and she's like willing to take that. I know that at the last minute she texts him, but I really thought that that was great writing on his part, because those are things I didn't expect from her.
Yeah, I agree. And then actually the Paxton character had his own depth too, because we kind of talked about his conflicted character in general, but he really kind of vacillates between caring about shit and just not giving a damn at all. He vacillates between being a company yes man and not caring if it all falls apart. And obviously there's motivations, like when he finds out that basically Cloud stole his patent from him. That's when he allows the bad shit to happen at the end. But like, he's a little bit craven, and he's not a hero character. He's got like nuance to him that, even though he's mostly good and you can mostly align with like what he cares about, like sometimes it's just like, dude, how could you take the side of your company when this bad thing happened? And other times it's like, like he's not the Captain America character where he's always like standing up for these values that are, they're always the same. He definitely bounces around a lot.
Well, yeah, and there's the whole thing, like, is his desire to please Dobbs, the sheriff.
Yeah.
Plays into that a lot. And, you get this guy and you're kind of introduced to him and you think he's going to be a real strong character. I mean, let's face it. Here's what we think at the beginning of this book, right? Like, these two are going to take down the big mega corporation. And the book really diverges from that thought into like they're a little bit self-interested. Like, they really have their interests and they're going to go to whatever lengths to fulfill their interests. And it's not, it becomes apparent, to me, probably about, 2/3 into the book, like, these people have their own kind of desires that they're looking after. Like, maybe they're not going to take down the Cloud Company, which ultimately, they don't. They fail.
Yeah. And then there's also, like, kind of tying into that is the idea that it's easier to just buy into the bullshit. Like, it just makes life easier. So the example of that being after the that manager the showdown at the hospital where he's like, after she beat him up, that manager guy, is attacking her.
Right.
And he's caught and everything. And, Paxton is assured by Dobbs that this guy's out of here, and Dobbs accepts it because he doesn't really have a reason not to, but B, it's just easier to know that, it's all taken care of, and then he can move on with his life. And then later when that guy comes back up as a janitor, then he's like, okay, I'm being betrayed by the people that I put my trust in. So I think that was very good, but it emphasizes the point, along with the Fahrenheit 451 thing, that sometimes it's just easier to just swallow what someone gives you than to really kind of try to understand what's really going on.
Speaking of swallowing things that people give you, holy crap, man. So I really thought that the burgers were going to be humans.
Yeah.
Like, that's all the people that, like, get fired. Because, you live on site. So if someone's gone and then they're let go, and that happens pretty frequently, there's like I forget what it's called, but it's like a mass purge, like once every couple months or whatever.
Oh, yeah. It's like cut day or something. It's not cut day, but it's like that kind of thing.
Yeah. That I thought, those people end up in the burgers. No. They're shit burgers, which was so much worse. Like, I had to actually ask myself, like, what's worse, shit burgers or human burgers? And then I think back to the, what was that book we read? The goddamn it, the Western about the cannibals, the Donner Party book.
Oh yeah, The Hunger.
The Hunger. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I could see that. I mean, I could see desperate times, eating people, whatever. And I was like, they're extracting protein out of fucking shit and making burgers out of it. And the thing is, the burgers are so fucking delicious. They're like the best burgers that anybody's ever had, which makes it that much more horrible.
I mean, there's an obvious metaphor about like how we love to eat shit somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. And I was kind of thinking too that because a lot of the I mean, obviously we know what the motivation of the book is, but a lot of the motivation of the character is figuring out but for Zinnia at least, figuring out this energy question. And so I kind of had a feeling like, where's this energy coming from too? Like, what are they doing with people? Like, there's a people, and there wasn't.
Yep.
Like they were like burning bodies or something like that, or hooking them up like batteries, like the Matrix.
And even that, so we could take, if you take the grossness out of the shit burgers, out. Even that I felt was explained. Like, this is a more efficient way to do it, and there's less, less harm to the ozone layer, and like even the explanation behind that, as horrible as it was, Rob continues to do this great balancing act where nobody's on board with shit burgers, but the explanation behind it is something you could almost buy into. And I feel like that was just throughout this whole book, that even as things were bad, you were like, well, he's presenting it kind of both sides of the spectrum and doing it in a way that's so well that obviously you can make the decision on if shit burgers are for you or not. But the explanation there was environmentally friendly, and obviously we know they taste good, and they're recycling, and they're, you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of good thought put into how to present a burger made from human feces.
Which falls apart when you think about the fact that they do nothing to tell people that that's where they're coming from. You can't have you can't have a positive message about impact when you're lying to people until they discover it on their own. Like, that's the thing about this company that I think over the course, like, you get both sides of it, like you're saying, but there's enough stuff, especially by the end, where they're obviously covering up some seriously questionable behaviors that I would hope that it's difficult for the common reader to fall on the side of the cloud company when all things are said and done, because you've got that Gibson Wells blog thing where he's, I think in the blog at one point he talks about how there's rumors about people jumping in front of trains, and that's completely false. But on the first time we see the Purge Day, like, that's like the most common thing that happens. Like, I think on the first time there was like 7 people that jumped in front of trains. You got to imagine that's just one facility out of how many. So, like, there's an overall deceitfulness to the company that overshadows what sounds like an altruistic type of situation.
Yeah. There's also the Dobbs character played a very central role in that, because at times I asked myself. So we get that Gibson kind of knows what's going on towards the end, but through the course of the book, with the sexual harassment rapist manager, whatever you want to call him, Dobbs kind of, like, they didn't even fire the guy. They transfer, you know what I mean? Like, Dobbs' job was to keep those things quiet. And I sometimes wonder, in a company, like, how much does the CEO know of the day-to-day goings on? Like, there's so many levels below him that smooth things out. Like, that at times I actually wondered, does Gibson Wells even really have a grasp? Like, maybe we're actually seeing and like I said, there's a little bit of a reveal at the end that he's not, as altruistic as Rob said. Like, he has a goal, but that goal really, he's perfectly happy to break a few eggs to make an omelet kind of situation. The most telling part of that, which I want to talk about here, because literally there's nowhere else we can talk about this, is the brilliance of the drug. And how they stop the drug from coming in, because they're really just making the drug on their own just to keep workers complacent.
Yep.
Which was, probably, to me, and I don't know if Rob's going to agree with this or not, that was probably the most horrifying part of the book. That they were like, and on top of all this, that we know you're kind of a last resort, but we do give you a roof over your head, and we give you enough money to eat, and you've got a little extra money to entertain yourself. Like, since you might be that unhappy, we're actually just going to drug you to keep you complacent. So that was probably the biggest reveal for me was that part, that the company would go that step. Because I think up until very close to that point, there really was, for me at least, kind of the both sides where you go, well, all right, I can see where they get to this. I can see where you get to that. And then that's really for me, the big bad reveal is that Cloud is making the synthetic drug to kind of keep people medicated.
I'll agree. And I think that's one of the things about the way this company works, to kind of answer your thing about Gibson Wells knowing about how much does he know about, kind of ties into this too. I think that my perception of this book is this 5-star rating system and how it's applied to your job performance has created a lot of secrecy so that you don't get in trouble, so that you don't lose your job. So a few times, basically anytime anything goes wrong where like, like you need to get help, it's easier to just to sweep it under the rug. So Dobbs doesn't want, to fire this guy because then it'll get out that there was a rapist. And that'll affect his rating or whatever. Same thing with like several different examples in the book. So in my impression, Dobbs, the sheriff, and probably all the sheriffs, do their best to, kind of cut corners and keep things from coming out because it's going to personally impact their job security, which keeps things from the higher ups. But the higher ups created the system that, makes that like a necessity. So like it doesn't excuse them. There just has to be like a whistleblower moment where, it has, all these things come to light so that people can know just how bad things are.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if I have anything else necessarily to spoiler wise to talk about. What else you got?
Oh, I do.
Oh, okay.
How fucking great is it that at some point in the book you just never hear from Zinnia again? Did you notice that?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's right after her showdown with Gibson.
Yeah. So you have no idea what her fate was because like they're saying that they're going to let her go. We know from reading this book that's that's likely not the case, but who knows? Like she didn't really do anything to hurt the company. She was working for the company.
Yeah, but I would imagine. I mean, my take is that they put a bullet in her head, right? And the reason I say that is she just knew too much, and by too much, she knows that the number 2 guy in charge was the one that hired her. Right. So what kind of fiasco would that be for your CNN headline?
Yeah.
Yeah. Assassin hired by, I forget what his position was, vice president of cloud to assassinate CEO or whatever.
Yeah, and the fact that like her perspective just stops being presented heavily implies that she got killed. Yeah,
I would have to agree with that.
But what a way to do it, man! Like just to tie it up by just never mentioning it again. That's another like he does so good with like giving you a very narrow field of options for what could have happened there. And in this case, it's very obvious that like she probably didn't get out of there.
Yeah. I mean, the balancing act in this book is, how do I say this? It's a great story. Is it, a perfect story? I don't know. No, you know what I mean? Like it's really, really, really good. But when I look at how masterfully he handled character development, character insight, just storytelling, the things that he weaves in and out of this book, and the balance is absolutely masterful.
Yeah, I'll agree.
Like it's really hard to find a fault with this. Is it the best book I've ever read? No, it's a book about a big company that takes over some stuff. It's a good book, but the way he presents it is truly, truly wonderful.
And since that's pretty close to wrap-up talk, I think we're going to jump back over to our regular episode and finish this one up. Thanks again for supporting us. And we were looking at our calendar earlier today, and there's just so much stuff on the horizon, and I think we're going to have a lot of opportunities to have more spoiler talk.